All right, good morning. Ready for a new week of this style of school. So it's Monday morning. We are in language lesson 7. I do not have a math video for you today because you're just taking a test, and so I hope that goes well. Take your time on it, check your answers, and then give it back to me for the weekend. Okay, so today is lesson 7 in language, and the title is called Interesting Words, and it's connected to poetry, so we'll get there in a little bit. But before that, we're going to do some rhyming words again. So I picked the word hobble, and I found 2 words that rhyme with it that I can think of right now. So let's go hobble. A rhyming word would be wobble and gobble. They all rhyme. So you can make a poem stanza with those 3, which might be kind of a silly poem. I'm not sure. A person who writes a poem is called a poet. Maybe you beat me to saying it. And the special movement and flow of a poem is called rhythm. I talked about that the other day. There's something that I want to clarify about poems. We talked about syllables in each stanza, how there's always like a pattern, like 8, 6, 8, 6, like 8 syllables, 6 syllables, 8 syllables, 6 syllables, or 6, 6, 6, 6, or 8, 8, 8, 8. Well, the other day in our lesson, we had one that was 8, 8, 8, 6. That's not like a normal pattern. Like, what is that? The reason it was like that is because the next stanza matched it. So a stanza is kind of like a paragraph in poems. There's a space between each stanza. So the first stanza was 8, 8, 8, 6, and the next stanza was 8, 8, 8, 6. So they have a pattern because the stanzas all have a pattern. I did not explain that. I didn't think that they were going to have that, but they did. So that is what that is. There's those kind of patterns too within stanzas, not just in lines. So you can keep your eyes open for that and probably find more of them. But today you can go to page number 25 and look at the top orange box called Interesting Words. So in a story, so if I would write a story, the way I would write it is how a person talks. Like, I would write it how I talk. But in poetry, the sentences are usually not written the way people say them. They're written in a more interesting way, a different way. It's called poetic writing. Poet is the person who writes a poem. Poetic writing. So it's not how we speak it, but it's an interesting way, a different way to write a poem. So there's an example in the box that I'm going to read, and this is a poetic way of writing, okay? He slept through the winter long and cold, all tightly up in his blanket rolled. Author unknown. So those 2 lines are poetic, interesting way of writing them. If I were to say them to you, tell you about this and what happened, I would not say it like this, right? I'm not going to say, he slept through the night, the winter long and cold, all tightly up in his blanket rolled. I would say something like, it was winter, it was cold, and this guy, he's wrapped up in his blanket all tight during the night. Right? I would explain it in a way that's different. So like poetic writing is just a different way of writing it that's more interesting, and it shows pictures in your mind more. It doesn't explain as much. So I'm going to read you a poem that shows pictures in your mind the way it is written, the interesting way that it is written. It's called The Sun Travels. The sun is not a bed when I at night upon my pillow lie. Still round the earth his way he takes, and morning after morning makes. While here at home in shining day, we're round the sunny garden play. Each little Indian sleepy head is being kissed and put to bed. And when at eve I rise from tea, day dawns beyond the Atlantic Sea, and all the children in the West are getting up and being dressed. By Robert Louis Stevenson. So, poetic writing writes it differently than a story. So poems sound different than the stories that we read in reading class. We also read poems there too, but poems are different. They're written in an interesting way to help us imagine in a different way. And we can see different pictures in our head that we can't if we have a story. So both are good, really fun, and very interesting and different. So on part B in your lesson, number 1, you're going to write, okay, so there's, on part B, there's a sentence of a meaning. So it's a dragonfly that landed on the edge of the leaf, and you're going to go back into the poem and try to find where it says that in interesting, different words, okay? So that's the meaning, and you're gonna go back in the poem and find the 2 lines, I think it's 2 lines, yeah, 2 lines of poem that say the same thing, but with different, interesting words, okay? So that's a fun thing to do, and I think your lesson should make a lot of sense. When you get to part K, in the spelling part, there's a orange box there that gives you a reminder for the next part, for part L. So when a word ends with a consonant and a Y, you need to change the Y to an I before adding a suffix. So like the word plenty, it ends with T-Y. T is a consonant, so T-Y. We're going to change the Y to an I and then add the suffix. So plentiful, F-U-L, we'll go plenty. We'll take off the Y, change it to an I, and then put the suffix in. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. All right, so have a really good lesson and have a good beginning to the week. Have a great day.